Hello and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israel helps convince the UN to combat Iranian missile testing. The new UN Secretary General affirms Jewish ties in Jerusalem, and some Venezuelan Jews get the news of a lifetime. I'm Natasha Kirchuk here with the latest news in Israel. The UN Security Council is convening for an urgent session today as the Israeli government is voicing alarm over Iran's brazen test firing of a ballistic missile on January 29th. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is extremely concerned over Tehran's show of force and has announced his hope that this flagrant breach of Security Council Resolution 2231 will push U.S. President Donald Trump into renewing sanctions against the Islamic Republic. That resolution was put in place as part of the 2015 nuclear deal, calling on Iran to end all activity related to ballistic missiles designed to be capable of delivering nuclear weapons. Today's emergency consultations in the UN were requested by the United States after Israel's UN ambassador called for immediate action in response to the Iranian aggression he says endanger not only Israel but the entire Middle East. Prime Minister Netanyahu also declared that the issue will top the agenda of his upcoming summit in Washington with Trump on February 15th. U.S. President Trump has promised to strengthen ties with Israel and has been sharply critical of the nuclear deal with Iran that led to the lifting of international sanctions. Proponents of the U.S. Embassy move to Jerusalem are a little more than disheartened today after U.S. President Donald Trump continues to roll his campaign pledge back even further away from becoming reality. The new American leader's now saying that the relocation he so ardently vowed to make as soon as he entered the White House isn't easy. Even more startling, he's now saying that even though he still likes the concept, there's only a chance of it happening. While it doesn't appear he's entirely ruled out the possibility, Trump says it's a big decision and is suddenly indicating that he now realizes that the matter has two sides. He also says the embassy move is being studied, even though that's not like him, because he usually does what's right. He then made direct references to the 35 times his predecessors in office signed waivers of the 1995 Jerusalem Embassy Act to delay the move ordered by Congress, and says he'll be making his decision in the not-too-distant future. Trump's latest views were expressed in a CBN interview right after U.S. Vice President Mike Pence discussed the matter with Jordan's King Abdullah. Amman sides with the Palestinians and most of the Arab world opposing any such relocation and has warned it could result in catastrophic diplomatic repercussions as well as possible violence. As a side note, the current waiver on the law to move the embassy from Tel Aviv expires in May of 2017, so we'll all know what Trump decides to do at least by that time, if not sooner. Well, this doesn't happen often, but Jewish groups in America are so against the new immigration ban imposed by U.S. President Donald Trump that it's actually bringing them together. Like any other faith, usually the leaders of the different denominations of Orthodox, Conservative, Reconstructionist, and Reform Judaism believe their approach is the right one. But now there's rare common agreement that they should stand together against the executive order barring the entry of refugees and travelers from 7 Muslim-majority countries into the U.S. All 4 branches of Judaism have come out against the policy, with the latest edition of a combined statement from 2 of the largest groups of ultra-religious Jews in the U.S. The Orthodox Union and Rabbinical Council of America are calling for all Americans to reaffirm that discrimination against any group based solely on religion is wrong. They're also stressing the importance of the U.S. government to recognize the threats posed by radical Islamists, while preserving and protecting the rights of all people who seek peace, no matter how they worship God. So you may not know this, but longtime Nazi hunter Beat Klarsfeld is now serving as a special UNESCO ambassador for the education of the Holocaust and prevention of genocide. Klarsfeld addressed the International Holocaust Remembrance ceremony in Brussels last week and told ILTV reporter Steve Leibowitz that she's quite concerned about the current rise of anti-Semitism.
Mrs. Klarfeld, we're here on International Holocaust Remembrance Day in the European Parliament. Are you concerned about the rise of anti-Semitism today in Europe?
Very much concerned, as well as my husband, whose father has been gassed in Auschwitz, or my son, who is very much engaged since a long time against the France Front National. I myself had been in the years of 60, 70 engaged in Germany against the NPD, and unfortunately the Karlsruhe had decided now not to forbid this party, the NPD. What's stupid, because the next day somebody from a new right-wing party in Germany had said the Holocaust Denkmal in Berlin is a Schande für Deutschland. Donc, it's very, very, very dangerous, you know. We know what will be the right-wing parties in Europe.
Just in the last hours, there have been reports in Germany that right-wing extremists were arrested for planning to attack Jews and migrants. Are you concerned about this development?
Well, anyway, you know, the immigrants had been attacked by the right wings, you know, the Pegida movement, what it was, and they made the fire in these homes. And the right wing is against, sure, you know, the NPD was anti-Semitic and against Israel, and the new party, the AfD, for the moment doesn't pronounce too much on what's concerning Israel and Jews, but still, you know, the right-wing parties are all anti-Semite and against Israel, there's no doubt about.
Finally, I'd like to ask you this. Is there some message you would like to send to the people in Israel on International Holocaust Remembrance Day?
Well, I know I'm now Israeli too, because I had become the Israeli nationality. So, you know, they see how a German has fought against Nazism and also had been always present in order to support the Jewish people and and I was all for the existence of the State of Israel and security. So what I can tell you, we have in Europe to fight that these right-wing parties cannot come to power. You know, it was so easy in a couple of years in Germany from very few deputies in the Reichstag that Hitler could come to power with 125 deputies. So Israel perhaps has to encourage those who fight in Europe against anti-Semitism and against the right.
Mrs. Klarfeld, world-famous Nazi hunter, thank you so much for being with us at ILTV.
It looks like the residents of the West Bank outpost of Amona have just received a military eviction notice ordering them to leave the community within the next 48 hours. The order has just been posted even though it was signed on Monday. The IDF says that the area will be completely sealed off in 2 days' time, meaning that the clock is already ticking for outpost locals. Residents will be able to file a new appeal to the IDF for a 48-hour extension, which, if given, would set eviction on the morning of the Sabbath. For now, residents must evacuate by Thursday morning, and there may be a showdown with settlers as a result. The announcement comes just ahead of the deadline on February 8th to finally demolish the outpost settlement, which was illegally constructed on privately owned Palestinian land, according to the High Court of Justice. There's been a lot of talk about the ongoing battle to legalize outpost settlements in the West Bank. The bill that would give these settlements legitimacy has just been postponed yet again over fights regarding the language in the bill. Here with us in the studio today with his perspective is Netzach Brot, a resident from Ofra, who lives in one of the 9 houses from the settlement slated for demolition. Thanks so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
So let's begin with, the big issue. The Israeli Supreme Court ruled 2 years ago to demolish your house, among the 9 others. And the demolition, if I'm not mistaken, is set for February 9th of this year. So what is your plan of action?
Well, I'll separate my answer to 2. First of all, I'm going to answer on a family perspective and then a public perspective. On a family perspective, I need to create a veil in order to guard my family and my children from the demolition. So we're doing everything we can in order to provide them what they need and just a comfortable bed that same night. We're going to move into a temporary house until we figure out where we're taking this. On a public level, what we have to do now is we have to show the absurd and of this court ruling, and for everyone to understand what is happening in this situation, why the court ruled whatever they ruled, and why we feel that it's unjust.
Now, the courts ruled that such houses like yours were built on land that was taken with forged or altogether missing documents. So if the settlement regulation bill passes and legalizes your home and others like it, is it not by default legalizing allegedly stolen land?
Well, the problem with the court ruling and opposed to this bill is that the court ruling was not provided on the grounds of private property. Of course, the appeal to the Supreme Court was that we were building illegal buildings on private property, but unfortunately, the court did not demand any of the appellants to, the appellees to prove their ownership over the property, and ruled regardless of their proven ownership. So, what happens over here is that 9 houses, or in other words, 9 families are being destroyed over because of court ruling without anyone practically proving their ownership over the properties. In a different case, in the Migron case, a couple years ago, the court ruled to demolish Migron. A couple months afterwards, when the Palestinian claiming for the rights over the property tried to sue whoever was living in Migron and to receive certain compensation for them using the property, the court dismissed the case and asked him to reject his request from the court because he wasn't able to prove his ownership over the property. That's why this is so problematic.
Were you aware of this issue when you decided to move into this?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I bought my house just as I would have bought a house in Jerusalem or in Tel Aviv. I have the proper documentation. I was assigned all the rights over the property by the proper governmental agency, and I wouldn't have changed anything from. Looking back, I wouldn't have changed anything from the way I purchased this house.
So this documentation that's allegedly belonging to Palestinians, where is this coming from then? That's what confuses me about this.
Okay, so this whole story starts several years ago when the Turks ruled in Israel, and maybe even more practically when the Jordanians ruled in Israel. And I don't think we should go to history, but in general, there were theoretical allocations of properties to different people. And it's very hard today to prove any sort of ownership with regard to the people who were registered as owners of the properties.
What do you think should be done now that we're in this situation? What is your ideal outcome here?
Well, I think that this bill has to pass because currently the situation is a catastrophe. Right now, people are living in houses that are on questionable property, and the Israeli government has to take action and regulate the whole situation right now. The 9 houses in Ofra and Amona is just the beginning of this huge slippery slope that we're facing right now.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in, Nitzach.
My pleasure.
We'll just have to wait and see what happens. Israeli diplomats are continuing their efforts to smooth over discord with Mexico that erupted when Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responded to praise from U.S. President Trump about the effectiveness of Israel's barrier on the Egyptian border. Netanyahu says he only spoke the truth about Israel's efforts to stop illegal infiltration and that his comments had nothing to do with Mexico. But the remarks the premier made in a tweet are being perceived by many as an endorsement of the wall Trump wants to build on the U.S.-Mexican border. And that's not only sparking a diplomatic rift, but also a reported surge of anti-Semitic messages on social media in Mexico. There have also been official calls for a public apology from Israel.
Hemos tenido muchos gestos de amistad con el pueblo israelita. Es absolutamente incomprensible que su primer ministro lleve a cabo una expresión de este tipo, que la consideramos francamente una agresión. Todos sabemos en México que cuando se habla de un muro de Trump, está hablando de un muro con México. Aunque no lo diga el tuit del primer ministro Netanyahu, nos parece que el primer ministro debe tratar a México como lo que es, como un país amigo.
As part of further efforts to improve relations, Israeli President Reuven Rivlin will be speaking with his Mexican counterpart later today. This follows a round of talks between Israel's ambassador to Mexico and the country's deputy foreign minister yesterday, as other members of the diplomatic corps emphasize that the premier never meant to disparage Mexico in any way. One spokesman is stressing the comments were only referring to Israel's specific security experience, which it's willing to share. And for his part, the Israeli Prime Minister continues to underscore his belief that the entire incident is just a misunderstanding that will not have any impact whatsoever on bilateral relations with Mexico.
I take this opportunity to explain or clarify what I did and did not say in my tweet the other night. I thought you'd be interested in that. I did point out the remarkable success of Israel's security fence, but I did not comment about U.S.-Mexico relations. We've had and will continue to have good relations with Mexico, and I believe our ties are much stronger than any passing disagreement or misunderstanding. And in fact, I've had a long and fruitful and very friendly relationship with Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto, and it will continue.
Now, this is a rather outlandish story. The parents of a deceased soldier are falling on hard times today as their bid to use their late son's sperm to produce and raise a grandchild is being fought against by the state. Aaron, fill us in on the details.
Well, this is a really tense and complicated story. There's a lot of raw emotions. Let's go to my report for more. Asher and Irit Shachar lost their son Omri in June of 2012. Omri was a naval officer who died in a car crash at the age of 25. With their wishes for their son to live a long life and raise a family of his own seemingly gone with the wind, they did something truly unique and had Omri's sperm extracted posthumously in efforts to produce and raise his grandchild. In September, they won the permission from the Petah Tikva family court to continue with their plan by having Omri's sperm and a purchased female egg implanted in a surrogate. The state, however, had other plans. The ruling was appealed on the basis of a similar case in which the grandparents of another soldier attempted to use grandparents' rights to procure sperm of their son as well. The widow of that soldier, however, objected to her in-laws' request and used a 2003 Attorney General directive to prove her case. Using this case as a basis for their own, the state won the appeal against Asher and Irit Shachar in the city of Lod's district court. Speaking with the Times of Israel earlier today, Irit Shachar said, quote, "The court really threw us back. This is very hard for us emotionally. Asher and I haven't left the house for the past 2 days. We could see things weren't going our way, and we tried to explain that ours wasn't the same story as in the other case," end quote. Shachar's attorney, Avidan Glowinski, made a similar claim, saying, quote, "The state didn't bring anything to its appeal other than the ruling in the Supreme Court case in which the judge decided not to give the parents the sperm because of an objection from the widow. This isn't relevant to our case. In our case, there is no widow, and the young woman who was Omri's girlfriend at the time of his death is very supportive of what his parents are trying to do." Glowinski is already preparing an appeal to the Supreme Court.
There's some great news for a group of Venezuelan Jews who have just been granted permission to immigrate to Israel. The 9 people most anxious to become the country's newest citizens say they're desperate to come because of a life and death situation in their home country. The 5 adults and 4 children belong to 3 families who reportedly live in a dangerous remote area where their safety is at risk and also endure a chronic lack of food and medical supplies. Their applications to come to Israel have been held up by the Interior Ministry, though, since they converted to Judaism and aren't from a recognized Jewish community. Another problem was that after 3 years of studying, they underwent a conservative rather than Orthodox conversion process, which can be problematic in Israel. But enormous public support that included several Knesset members ultimately overcame any official objections. There's been heavy criticism that the ruling lacks respect for non-Orthodox Jews, though, because the Venezuelans' entry is contingent on undergoing a second symbolic conversion and becoming active members of Jewish communities for at least 9 months before they can officially receive their citizenship papers. The majority of Israelis don't really care about such distinctions, and almost everyone is anxious to warmly wish the Venezuelans Bruchim Abayim La'aretz Israel, meaning welcome to the land of Israel. Now, today we have a very inspiring interview for you. With so many diplomatic issues between Israel and Iran, it seems outlandish that an Israeli would want to travel to the Islamic Republic. Well, Israeli singer Hadar Maoz is on a mission to promote intercultural understanding by performing in Iran, and she's here to tell us why. Thanks for coming in.
Yes,
Hadar, I already see her
hello.
here with this instrument. Let's hear a little something. Beautiful. I got chills from that. It's amazing.
Yeah,
So,
wow.
all right, let's start with the big question on everybody's minds. Why on earth would you want to travel to Iran, given the current situation between Israel and Iran?
Yeah. A lot of people ask me these questions, but I want to explain something. I am a Jewish musician and singer, but my roots of my family coming from Iran. My grandmother was a singer and musician, and she taught me this kind of devotional singing and traditional Iranian singing and music when I was little. And when I grew up, I started to perform and start to develop the modern music, music like blues and groove, strong groove and a little bit rock. And I combined this kind of two different worlds between, the Iranian music and the very special music of the West.
Wow.
Yeah, and
So, I mean, it's interesting because you choose to you perform in Farsi, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not just in Hebrew, which is something that
Yeah.
really stands out. And you found a way to make this music something that, I guess viewers from all different backgrounds can appreciate. So what kind of a reaction do you get from Israelis?
The Israelis, they like it very much. And this is, in Israel, it's kind of, unique music, exotic music. And lots of people that not from Iran come into my shows and love it. And now I finish my work on my third album that's called Asian Soul.
Wow.
Yeah. And I perform all over in Israel, and I have two successful shows in Manhattan and Brooklyn that people like it.
Now, what about, Iranian listeners? Have they responded to your music at all? And has your identity as an Israeli and Jew in any way affected how your music's received?
Yeah, I know that right now in Iran, people a little bit know me and like me, yes, and there is no difference, I think, between, in music, between Israel and Iran. Iranian, Israeli, Jewish, person, and I like what I do. And yes, I have a very, very, very special dream that will become true in the future.
Absolutely, to go to Iran.
To go to Iran and to, perform there to the people, and make my music there to the people and make a harmony.
Enough of this diplomatic mess. Just, speak out to the people. And I think that's what music does. It really connects different groups. I remember actually Rita, she's a big Israeli star here who we interviewed in the past, guys. And she is also Persian, and she would sing in Farsi, and she had a huge following in Iran, so that was pretty cool. So, for those who want to hear you here in Israel or abroad, not just in Iran, how can they do that?
They can, see in my YouTubes and my perform. Yes, I have lots of YouTube video clip, and I have a big perform in Tel Aviv to the Nowruz. You know what is a Nowruz?
No, I don't.
It's like the Christmas of the Christian, This
is
the
okay, right, yes.
All right, in 16 למרץ.
16th of March, okay.
Yes, in Tel Aviv, and I perform all over in Israel,
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming in, Hadar. It really seems like you're on a mission to do something very positive for not only the world, but Israeli-Iranian relations.
Wow. Thank you very much.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. There are new immigrants in every country every day. In fact, many of us here at ILTV are immigrants ourselves. So today's word is me'ager, meaning immigrant. Here in Tel Aviv, like in most big cities, the culture is largely built on me'agrim or immigrants. Many of my neighbors and I are me'agrim, and we go to shops owned by me'agrim, eat foreign foods introduced to us by me'agrim, and sometimes even my doctor at the hospital is a me'ager. The point is that while hagira or immigration is common, the diversity it provides is still special, and we should try to celebrate the differences that make each me'ager unique. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast.
ILTV's weather forecast is sponsored by Adopt a Savta, taking care of Israel's lonely Holocaust survivors.
Tonight will be partly cloudy with a chance of scattered rainfall and a low of 46 or 8 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow you can expect the temperatures to drop again to a high of 55 or 13 degrees Celsius. It should be partly cloudy with more light rain. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.78 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. Thanks for watching and see you tonight.